So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's program, which has quite a delightful title, The Anglo-Indians Chiseled by History. This is part of the series of programs during Madras Week that the Press Institute of India has been conducting. I'm particularly delighted to welcome the members who will be speaking tonight on the panel, and I must tell you that it is quite a strong lineup of Anglo-Indians, some of the who's who of Anglo-Indians in Chennai, in Madras. So a warm welcome to Professor Eugenie Pinto, Harry McClure, Dr. Brian Pepin, and Richard O'Connor. Well, I think we'll have a look during the next 1 hour at the history of the Anglo-Indians, their joys and sorrows, their hopes and disappointments, their happiness, their successes, their failures, etc. Before I hand it over to Richard, let me have the pleasure of introducing briefly each of the four speakers. Professor Eugenie Pinto, after her master's at Stella Maris College, joined collegiate service in the state government and retired as the principal of Queen Mary's College. She was also a member of the Tamil Nadu Women's Commission for 2 terms. She was awarded a fellowship by the Australian government to research on Australian studies in their universities for future introduction in Indian universities. Eugenie has been a resource person for orientation programs held by the Madras University. Pleasure having you, Eugenie. Thank you for joining. Harry McClure is a man of many parts. He's a short story writer, comic book illustrator, playwright, screenwriter, and filmmaker. And he, over the past 22 years, has been editing an international magazine for Anglo-Indians called Anglos in the Wind. And he's also the founder editor of Anglo Ink Books, the publishing arm. In 2013, Harry wrote and directed a 40-minute film, which was called Going Away, and that was screened at the Press Institute of India, among other places. In 2018, he produced and co-directed an eight-episode documentary called The Anglo-Indians of Madras. You can find this documentary on YouTube. It's called the Pepper Watcher Productions. Pepper Watcher Productions. And now Harry is in the final stages, I understand, of post-production of an English language feature film he has written and directed. And it's called Calcutta, I'm Sorry. Calcutta, I'm Sorry. Significantly, Harry is also the co-author with none other than S. Mutaya, city historian, of a book called The Anglo-Indians, a 500-year history. And all Anglo-Indians out there must have a copy of this book. Welcome, Harry. Delighted to have you on our program tonight. Dr. Brian Pepin taught English language and literature for 28 years in a prestigious city college, becoming the head of the department in the final year. Assignments in Oman and Saudi Arabia for another 9 years saw him established as the director of 2 English language centers. He is also an author, having published 3 books, and a novel is likely to be out soon. Most of his writings are based on Anglo-Indian life. Welcome, Dr. Brian. And finally, as they say, last but not the least, the man who's going to moderate and steer this program, Richard O'Connor, is Assistant Commissioner at the Customs. He's now based in Tirunelveli and he joins us from there today evening. Richard has collaborated on the book I just mentioned, The Anglo-Indians: A 500-Year History by Mr. Mutaya and Harry McClure. He has a deep interest in Anglo-Indian history. He has collaborated in bringing out special issues of Anglos in the Wind, focused on Anglo-Indian settlements in India, and also on Anglo-Indian contribution to hockey. Richard is also the architect of a docu-series which is called Anglo-Indians of Madras, which you will find on YouTube. So it's quite a panel here tonight, and we look forward to listening to them. Over to you, Richard. Best wishes for your moderation and steering from Tirunelveli. Over to you.
A big hello to everyone, and I sincerely hope that you all can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to this peek into the journey of the Anglo-Indian community. The city of Madras has just turned 382 years, and what a remarkable growth it has been. In many ways, the growth of the Anglo-Indian community has been coterminous with the growth of the city of Madras, if not more. One would be tempted to say that the Anglo-Indian community is also 382 years old, but then that would not be true, because we just do not come from Anglo stock. As many of you would know, our fraternity also includes the French, the Portuguese, the Dutch, and many others of European heritage, who were actually here long before the British had arrived into the country. And as far as the city of Madras goes, Portuguese Mailapo certainly flourished for over 100 years before the launch of British Madras. Interestingly, Vasco da Gama had come to India in 1498, around about the time that Christopher Columbus and Amerigo Vespucci and many others landed in America. And it would not be too far-fetched to say that the Anglo-Indian community dates back to the time when the Americans first came into being, Americans of European stock. And if one were to even touch upon the British, we would know that Jamestown or James Fort was started in Virginia in 1607. The Mayflower set sail in 1625. And the British in India started the first factory at Surat in 1650, and at Madras established the first settlement in 1639. So we are looking at similar timelines here. For those of us in the panel, or rather our three speakers on the panel, and we've all been together celebrating this Madras week for over a decade now, both Eugenie, Brian, Harry, and myself. We've been in talks, in walks, in documentaries, and I'm sure this discourse is not new to our panel.
I was supposed to coordinate with Richard, but I don't mind starting. I was going to talk about Anglo-Indian women and education. It is quite a vast topic. So I just thought I would start with how important Anglo-Indian teachers were always in Madras. Because we at Anglo-Indian specifically in Madras. And I've noticed we've had so many Anglo-Indian schools in the past. And if you remember, there was Mrs. Felix, who was headmistress of Dufton. And there was Cynthia Ignatius, who was headmistress of St. Matthias Anglo-Indian School. And they were pioneers in many ways, because Cynthia Ignatius's maternal aunt started what was called the Shram Academy in Chennai. And there are 4 schools attached to that particular academy. And this is an Anglo-Indian venture by Anglo-Indian women, which is something fantastic in today's world. It started in 2000. So here we see Anglo-Indian women involved in education right from the time perhaps post-colonial times onwards, and now improvising on that, not waiting on government regulations or government funding to start schools, but doing it on their own. So they have gone from strength to strength, which is marvelous, I feel. Now that besides school education, I found that Anglo-Indian women have played a significant role in the community as a whole. They were pioneers in several fields across the country, and they were always great at multitasking, whether it was at home or at work or whatever came their way, even in social gatherings. And it is their intellectual caliber, their attitude, their work ethics, their tenacity, their self-determination, the courage of their convictions, and their excellent communication and language skills that are all evident in young Anglo-Indian women even today. They have inherited this from their forebears. And Madras has had eminent Anglo-Indian women in different fields as doctors. There was Dr. Colleen Srinivasan, there was Dr. Cecilia White in the past. There are a few young Anglo-Indian doctors practicing today. They were educators, academicians, civil servants in the past, and even today. Several city colleges have had excellent Anglo-Indian professors. Dr. Beatrix D'Souza is one such name. Everyone knows her. She headed the English department at Presidency College, and she has a doctorate in Commonwealth writing, and especially with regard to Australian writing. But she went on to distinguish herself politically as well, as nominated MLA and MP. Then we had Anne de Monte after that. We've had Dr. Anne Mary Fernandez, economist and educationist, who was the first woman registrar of the University of Madras. And we find that in the colleges in Chennai, both in Stella Maris, in WCC, in government colleges, there were several well-known Anglo-Indian professors and lecturers. In Queen Mary's too, we had Anglo-Indians in the English department, in the home science department, as well as in the French department. Besides teachers, Anglo-Indian women have made a name for themselves as secretaries. There were business houses in Chennai, such as Paris and Vinny's and so on, who found them indispensable. They couldn't do without them, and they relied on their efficiency and dedication. Besides, in the medical field, I spoke about Anglo-Indian doctors, but what about the Anglo-Indian nurses? They were par excellent in the government hospitals as well as in private hospitals. Remember, Lady Willingdon Hospital is no longer in functioning at present. They had some of the most amazing Anglo-Indian nurses. And the Anglo-Indian matrons in these hospitals were always looked upon with great respect. Today, I find there is a resurgence of confidence in young Anglo-Indian women. There is a renaissance of sorts taking place in the educated Anglo-Indian women of today, and a process of reinvention in the community. We find that Anglo-Indian women of today are on the forefront of this movement, making use of all the educational opportunities available to them. And they have distinguished themselves, Harry, in whatever field they have chosen. And how have they distinguished themselves? By their integrity, by their loyalty, by their hard work, and on their emphasis on doing things to the best of their ability, wherever they worked. And they are more aware today of the need to educate themselves as they have ventured into new areas of studies. You find young Anglo-Indian girls in nanotechnology, in biotech, in medical research, both in India and in universities abroad. They are looking at new areas of expertise. Some of them are entrepreneurs as well, in event management, in communications, in sound technology, in so many fields, not to mention those who have excelled themselves in conventional areas as well. They have ventured into roads less traveled with remarkable success. And I really like to applaud the new horizons these young women have chosen. They have taken the whole idea of Anglo-Indian women in education to a completely new dimension. There are a number of young Anglo-Indian achievers and entrepreneurs of Chennai who have taken this early liberation and emancipation of their Anglo-Indian forebears to a new dimension, as it were. They are reinventing themselves in the process, reinventing their community as they evolve in their successful careers, both in India and abroad. The educated young Anglo-Indian women of Chennai today are confident young women. They have reimagined themselves, and I repeat, they have reinvented themselves. as they assume transformative roles in society today. I applaud their resilience. I applaud their tenacity, especially in their determination to succeed. It is commendable that in such a microscopic community as ours, we could produce such young women of caliber. They are women of substance for whom there is no perceivable glass ceiling to shatter because they are already reaching for the stars. I would like to mention some of these few women achievers in Chennai today. They come from different fields. You have Debbie Westcott, a training consultant. You have Andrea Jeremiah, film star, playback singer, dancer. You have Andrea Austin, event manager, wedding planner. Elvina Starr, communications trainer. Brittany Barron, a young doctorate who used to teach at Etherage College. She's taken a sabbatical at present. There's Tanita Pereira, stylist, designer, ad photographer. There's Andrea Jacob, movement specialist, choreographer and scriptwriter. There's Lisa Harris, event manager. There's Petula Thomas, director of the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce. And there's Karen Scurville, who was manager at Jet Airways. This is just an inkling of the kind of professions they have taken to. It's a wide spectrum. It's no longer associated only with education, but they have got their experience from education, from taking new paths, traveling new roads. There's also the Anglo-Indian
Please, please.
Okay. Well, my name is Brian Pepin. I started my romance with the Anglo-Indians in books and literature in 1979-80, when I undertook a study of British writer Paul Scott, famous for his Raj Quartet. After that, in 2001, I registered for a PhD in the Madras University, and my topic was the character of the Anglo-Indian in recent English fiction. I completed my degree, that's the PhD, in 2010, and I changed my dissertation into a book which is titled Black and White, in which I examine a great number of works by Anglo-Indians, maybe for Anglo-Indians, about Anglo-Indians, and a lot of crap about Anglo-Indians too, by the critics and maybe others. So, if I confine myself to actual Anglo-Indian writers, then I can think of probably just two, Mr. Ruskin Bond and Mr. Alan Seeley. Of course, there have been others. Frank Anthony's Britain's Betrayal is one such book. Herbert Alex Stark, Hostages to India, is another book. But they don't fall within the ambit of writing and novel writing and fiction and portrayal of the community at large. The non-Anglo-Indian writers who I have been looking at include Mulkraj Anand, Saros Kawasji, and to name a few foreigners, they are Paul Scott himself, MMK, and the great supposed Anglo-Indian writer, Bhavani Junction's famous John Masters. All of them, to my mind, have portrayed, I mean these other writers, have portrayed the Anglo-Indian community in the most abysmal way possible. They look at it from very blinkered eyes, and their vision doesn't go beyond the stereotype, so that the Anglo-Indian woman in their books comes out as a vixen and a man chaser. A man, Anglo-Indian man, if he is ever mentioned, is not a man. And the list can go on and on, because this is how they have followed the stereotype laid down by earlier writers on the theme. The Rumer and John Gordon, for example, Maud Diver, for example, and they have not seen anything worthwhile in the community. The latest book that I actually, I think I would like to say I tore it apart, was Laura Roy Chowdhury's The Jadu House. In that book, she has the temerity to say that the Anglo-Indian library is like Mother Hubbard's cupboard. It's bare because they lost the book, she says. I don't know where she got her information from, but I myself have been writing. My books are Anglo-Indian specific most of the time. Ruskin Bond touches upon Anglo-Indian life, but he's bigger than all that. And Alan Seeley, of course, in the Trotonama chronicles a 7-generation saga, which again doesn't come right down to the very present. So we are still left in limbo on that score. What I have tried to do is to bring it up to date. And hopefully my books, when they come out, the last one especially, will target a huge audience, a wider audience than I have had with my earlier books. And as I say in my dissertation turned nonfiction work, I want to set the record straight. An Anglo-Indian is a human being, is what I say as my first sentence in that book. Lots of people take us for that, but millions others don't. Even people who know what, who, and how we are. So it is a very tainted picture that has been portrayed by others about us. And hopefully in the future, with more and more younger people, especially taking up to showing what we really are made of, we can set right the mistakes of the past and try to show that we are a living, a vibrant, a fun-loving, a forward-looking community that will never go down. Thank you.
Thanks. That was good.
So thank you, Sashi, and thanks to the Press Institute of India for inviting me for this evening's session on the Anglo-Indians. My little contribution for the evening would be, the Anglo-Indians who've worked for the cinema or cine industry in Madras. So I like to start off by saying that I studied in a school in Vepri. It's called St. Joseph's High School, Anglo-Indian High School. And I had a couple of classmates who lived just next door to the school on the very famous street called Woothakatan Street. Now, Woothakatan Street, why it was famous in those days it was because there were lots and lots of Anglo-Indian families living on either side of the street. And one family that I can recall, because I used to visit the home very, very often, was the Fernandez family. And Mrs. Bernard also lived in that because she was related to the Fernandezes. Everyone who knew her called her Auntie Bernard. And Auntie Bernard was the only Anglo-Indian film agent in those days. And whenever you go to that house on Wuthukatan Street, it used to have this lovely Anglo-Indian party atmosphere. And I was doing my 10th standard that time. And I didn't know much about the cine industry in Tamil Nadu or in Madras. So I always wondered, well, what are these young, good-looking, beautiful girls and handsome men doing here in this house? It was a large house. It was like a big Anglo-Indian home. And what are they doing here? And so I asked my classmates. He said, no, this is not a party. All of them are waiting for the van to come. I said, what van and where are they taking them to? He said, oh, you don't know. All these people are extras. I didn't even know what the terminology extra means. So then I asked, where's these studios? Then this guy said, oh, the studios, you don't know. Gemini Studios, Vahuni Studios, and there are so many big studios that make huge Tamil and Malayalam and Telugu films. And these youngsters, actors, extras in the background scenes, in party scenes in the movies, or if they are going to have a song and dance sequence and they need some extra dancers in the frame, so they are called for. So those days, apparently they were paid very well and they were given food and maybe even drinks. And our youngsters contributed quite a bit in that field, but it's a low category in the movie making. In those days, not many people from other communities were comfortable working for films. So Anglo-Indians were very popular in those days. And Auntie Bernard became very, very famous. And if any film producer in Madras wanted extras, the first person they'll contact is Auntie Bernard. So this is about those days in the late 70s I'm talking about, but Auntie Bernard was existing. I mean, she was having this business for a very long time, from probably the 60s onward. And this was somewhere in Perimet. Now, of course, Perimet has become a leather, everybody has sold out, and Anglo-Indians have moved out of Perimet, and there are no more Anglo-Indians living in those areas. So, and then the next thing I like to talk about is the Anglo-Indian musicians who really contributed quite a bit of their talent, time, and energy to do the re-recording for Tamil films, and also to lend their support to the music directors of yesteryears. And there were many, many good Anglo-Indian musicians who played for the Tamil films, Telugu films, and even Hindi films in those days. My uncle, my mother's younger brother, his name was Frank Dubier. Frank Dubier is a well-known name, and he was a good wind instrumentalist. He played the trumpet, trombone, saxophone, the flute, and he also, before starting his career, he played the drums. So he was a multi-talented artist or a musician. So he used to play for top musicians like Vishwanath Ramamurthy, Ilayaraja, and so on. So based on his strength, I used to go and listen to the re-recording of the background music or a song in Gemini Studios. Those days, Gemini Studios was by Anna Saleh by the flyover. It was huge. And to enter in, you can't, it's very, very hard. So, but he gave the the security people a standing order saying that if this chap comes in, you need to send him in. So I was very keen on movies in those days. So I used to go there and go into the soundproof recording studios where the orchestra used to play music, background music, while watching the film on a big screen. So it was very interesting for a young guy like me, And we've made a lot of head from those days, the small times, like I was talking about the extras, and now of course they're called junior artists. So from those days to now, I think we've come a long way, because people like Anthony, he's an Anglo-Indian, and he's one of the best editors in the Tamil cine field in South India. His full name is Llewellyn Anthony Gonsalves, but everyone know him as Anthony in the Tamil field, because Llewellyn and Gonsalves is a little difficult to pronounce for many of the Tamilian people here in Madras. So he stuck to just being called Anthony. So he's one of the great film editors. Currently, he's one of the top guys. And then, of course, we've got Andrea Jeremiah. Eugenie also mentioned Andrea Jeremiah. Andrea is a good actress, a good singer, playback singer, and she's a lovely person to work with. And she's hit the top now. She's working with lots of good directors these days in Tamil field, the Malayalam cine field, and also Telugu. So, I also, before I wind up, I know I'm running out of time, but before I wind up, I want to mention another gentleman who really made it big in those days. His name is Marcus Bartley. Marcus Bartley was an Anglo-Indian, but many, even till today, if you ask some old timer, they'll say, no, Marcus Bartley was a foreigner. But actually, Marcus Bartley was an Anglo-Indian. He used to live on Aspirin Garden Road in Keelpok. And he made many, many lovely Tamil movies, Telugu movies, and Malayalam, and even Hindi. And three of his most famous movies are Bhadala Bhairavi and Maya Bazar and Chemmin and Miss Amma. Miss Amma was a very good movie. And the most important aspect of his cinematography, because he was a fantastic cinematographer, he did those trick shots, trick photography, especially in the movie called Maya Bazar. He for that song Kalyana Samayal Sadam, the giant sits down and eats up all the sweets in a wedding reception, and the sweets go flying into his mouth by magic. And that was shot by in those days when there were no computer graphics or anything like that. And he managed to bring out the best trick photography, and his shots, moonlight shots, were excellent. So much so, he got the National Film Award for a movie called Shanti Nilayam, and also the Tamil Nadu State Film Award for the same film. He was a wonderful film technician in those days for Tamil cinema. I think we have to highlight that, because lots of people seem to forget that Marcus Bartley was from the Anglo-Indian community. And quickly, I have to just say just few good movies that came out, and some did well, some didn't do well. One was Chatakari, a Malayalam film about an Anglo-Indian young girl. She falls in love with a Hindu boy, and the conflict then happens. And then we got a movie from Kolkata, which was Bo Barracks Forever. It was directed by Anjan Dutt. Then there's another movie called The Outhouse. That was directed by Leslie Carvalho. All these movies that I'm talking about have central characters, Anglo-Indian central characters. Then, of course, Bhavani Junction, directed by the American filmmaker George Cukor. That was one of the famous box office hits in those days. And of course, I made a film several years ago called Going Away. And I'm happy to say that the producer, Nigel Foot from Melbourne, is with us today, this evening. And I've just finished another film called Calcutta, I'm Sorry. It's a feature film. And our producer from the UK, Pran Amrit, is also with us today. And we keep hoping and praying that the youngsters from within our community will take up to this very, very creative field. It's a very creative but competitive field. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks for that wonderful insight into the Anglo-Indian contribution to the world of film. I know that you wear many hats, and having collaborated with you on a few projects, I know that although you are an illustrator, you're a writer, you're an event manager, you're a cartoonist, and so many other things, but I know that what is dearest to your heart is making films, watching films, appreciating films, and we are really glad that you are able to speak on this topic. Of course, thanks to Brian. Brian again has done a significant work in the field of Anglo-Indian contribution to literature and Anglo-Indian portrayal in literature. And Eugenie too has been with the Forum of Anglo-Indian Women, and is the right person, and having been in the world of academics and educational administration, was the right person to speak on the subject.
Richard, if it's not working, I think we can.
I think you should take questions now. I think we've run through this a few times. It's not working. So let's take questions. I see Sri Kumar Verma here. So Sri, hi. Nice to see you after a very long time. So great for those of you who don't know Sri Kumar. Of course, he's a novelist. He's written books, Lament of Mohini, I remember, and of course Maria's Room, both I think long-listed for the Crossword Prize and the Man Asian Prize. He's also written books for children, etc., and 7 or 8 full-length plays, 1 short play and 2 mini plays and things like that. I remember he taught English literature and journalism at the Madras Christian College. So, of course, he's there. Thanks, Ashri, for being here. And I also see Yamuna here, who's also a playwright. So I think some of them can have questions, and we can have a discussion, Richard, if I'm not butting in too much, because you're not getting the audio and other things right. Yeah.
I'm glad you intervened in my absence, and we really look forward to an interaction with those online.
Maybe Brian can tell us about his new book that is in the offing. In the meantime.
Is anyone interested?
Of course. Especially when you've told me the title. I think you can share that with us.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Well, this is my 4th book, and hopefully it will come out next month in Chennai. And I'm looking forward to the launch. The book is called The Nowhere Man. The Nowhere Man. And that's the book.
Okay.
It is a fictional piece about a man who lives between 1950 and 1970. I'm sorry, 2020, 70 years of his life. And because he is an Anglo-Indian, especially an Anglo-Indian from South India, especially Tamil Nadu, He sees things that many people do not see, and he experiences things that many people will never experience, and he writes about things that people may never write about too. So it's all there in the book. I have read it more than 100 times, and each time I read it, I'm happy with it, and I'm hoping that my readers will also grab it up, because it is coming from the publishing house by Harry McClure called Anglo Inc. And we are collaborating on this particular book, and hopefully we can have a launch sometime next month.
Do you have any women characters in that book of yours?
Yes, of course.
No, tell us about them.
Well, show me an Anglo-Indian man who isn't interested in women. And peculiarly, in my case, for the first 25 years, 28, 30 years of my life, I'm talking about myself, but actually it's the character in this book. He has eyes only for Anglo-Indian women. So after that, there's not much really to talk about the women, but he does give, the protagonist of the novel does give us an inside picture of what works for an Anglo-Indian man in his relationship with women. And there are things that are no, and all that kind of stuff. And so I deal with it from a fictional point of view. Let me remind you all, in a very realistic manner.
That's saying a lot.
So, well, I suppose you'll have to read it and buy as many copies as you want, as you can.
Intriguing title like that, The Nowhere Man.
Yes, I got it from my craze regarding the Beatles, the British pop and rock group called the Beatles. They have a song called, it goes, he's a real nowhere man, living in his nowhere land, making all his nowhere plans for nobody. And the nowhere man, I think, typically epitomizes the Anglo-Indian of today, because as our topic for today says, we are chiseled in history, right? That's the topic of today.
Maybe, but we've been chiseled by history. It doesn't mean we're
chiseled.
turned to stone.
No, chiseled by history. I would like to go one step ahead there. Right now, the artist who has been chiseling us for 500, 600 years have completely erased the image. And so now, if we are not dangling men, we are nowhere men.
Huh. That's interesting. But I certainly won't want to be known as a nowhere woman.
Well, yeah, that may be true. But then, as Yeats would say, W.B. Yeats would say, we have to sing and louder sing for every tatter in our mortal dress. If we don't project ourselves, who will? They've already written us out of the Constitution. They've taken away our seats in the Lok Sabha and some of the legislatures.
Yes.
Who else? Unless we sing ourselves, about our glory, about
Our
pride
about
that
our
we have.
past.
Yes.
Well, Brian, you remind me, was it Joseph Conrad who wrote Heart of Darkness?
Yes, it
And,
was.
and could see Life and Times of Michael Kay. He won the Booker. He won the Booker for a very dark novel. So you just never know.
Yes.
Darkness has its place.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Conrad himself was a foreigner to the English language, and the way he mastered it and the way he portrays characters in the heart of darkness, we can only say with him, the horror, which is what my community, our community is facing now. I feel very strongly about it.
Brian, I only hope that we are able to read some lighter elements in your novel. Do you have a little bit of humor?
Oh, yes, there's a great lot of it. You have to read it to really understand.
Sure. Look forward to reading it.
Thank you, Richard.
Maybe ask our panelists a question. Please.
Richard, it's Nigel Foot. I'd like to share something with Brian.
Sure.
I came across this. I don't know if you can see that. It's a 9-penny paperback.
The name of it?
The Anglo-Indians.
Okay,
That isn't mine.
by Perrin.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks interesting.
It's just a paperback. It's one of those, kiss and tell type novels that sold well in the 60s and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But
I haven't come across it yet.
Yeah. I in my research several years ago, I came across a family. They had it in their possession. They've loaned it to me, but it just, it reinforces what you said, the stereotype of the Anglo-Indian that was thrown about for a long time. But my question is about the identity of Anglo-Indians in India at this time.
Yes.
The last time I was in Chennai was 4 or 5 years ago. I think Harry and I traveled around India looking for locations for a film we were working on.
Okay.
But one of the things that I've, been puzzled by is who are the Anglo-Indians now that are left in Chennai? That's not a question, it's a statement.
I'm going to meet the real ones, please.
Because, the term Anglo-Indian now, if you look at it in the big picture, doesn't really apply to the way it was used, even up to 10 or 15 years ago, because what is an Anglo-Indian? And if you look in England, of course, there have been unions there between English and Indian immigrants for a long time.
Yep.
So are they Anglo-Indians?
In my definition, an Anglo-Indian is a citizen of India, period.
Yeah, see, and they're the things that, when our community was all put together under that one title, it was probably one of the greatest follies for our community.
Yep.
And it has left confusion around the world ever since it came into being, because of course even the very definition itself is pretty confusing. It's confusing for Anglo-Indians. You can imagine how confusing it is for other people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the youth in India today, some of the young people that I've spoken to whose grandparents were Anglo-Indians, they don't really want to stand out as Anglo-Indians. They want to be Indians.
That has crept into the psyche now, But people of my generation, I'm pretty old myself, and perhaps a little younger, we still retain our identity. We still proclaim our identity. We will not give up.
But what do you, when you say give up, what are you giving up?
Well, what has been taken from us? We have been written out of the Constitution, as I said. We have been we have lost our seats in the legislature and the parliament. But as I say in my book, if the true history of modern India has to be written, the Anglo-Indian community will come out with flying colors in this myriad of cultures that is India.
I would
So
just
what do you say? What do you say to an Indian then who says that what's been taken away was something that you were given as a privilege by the British, not by the Indians?
It was no. It was the Indian Constitution that gave us these privileges. It came from there, but the Indian Constitution in Article 334, 333, they laid down. But until 2020, we were there. Now it has been scrapped. So why is my question? What have we done wrong that the others who still continue to reap the benefits have done right?
Okay, now let's try to come back to what Nigel was saying. He was talking about the identity of the Anglo-Indian. See, it has gone, without going too much into it, but it has gone a transition over the years. Right until the end of the 19th century, Anglo-Indian mostly referred to the British who stayed here. But towards the latter part of 19th century, maybe 1880s, and then early part of the 20th century, the term Anglo-Indian began to be applied to the mixed race, the mixed community. Now, it can be contended because it appears to be a misnomer because we come from different paternal line comes from different European nations. So the ideal name would have been Euro-Indian. Okay, I think Mr. Mutaya mentioned this before.
Yes, Mr. Mutaya suggested.
But that was not to be. So we can't change the name now. It is Anglo-Indian. Okay, that's in terms of the name. In terms of the identity, I think this is a challenge not only for those Anglo-Indians within India, but also for those in the diaspora, where they're marrying into other communities. But it is up to the grandparents to continue to keep the tradition, whether it's in music and dance, whether it's in cuisine, whether it's in terms of our faith. And I find that this is happening. Although there are intermarriages happening, but the culture largely continues. Look at any one of Harry's shows in the city, for example, whether it's one of his Blazing Guitars shows or whether even during the reunion, people come out of the woodworks. They come. You think, where are they gone? But they come, and you look at the spirit at museum theater. When a song is sung, you look at the spirit. Everybody's part of it. So there's nothing for us to be too worried about. The seats were never a permanent thing. It was given only for 10 years. So at some time in future, it would have lapsed. Okay, and it was, to me, it was more of a identity, kind of a flag. We are talking about identity. It was kind of a badge of honor, a flag. It didn't really matter much to the man on the ground. They didn't really benefit, but then we mattered. People would look at it. You're studying civics. The only 2 nominated seats were from the Anglo-Indian community. So those who don't know us from different corners of India will know that there's such a community. It has happened. If it comes back, good, but otherwise it is not the end of the world. I remember Einstein saying before the Jews could get the Israel, the state of Israel, saying that our most beautiful thing is that we are a vulnerable community. And he was worried, whether the Jews getting a separate state of their own, would make things complicated for them. So this is a part. So let us cherish this kind of vulnerability, this kind of, let us be a jewel of a minority, and stay positive. Let's stay positive. There is still a lot that we can contribute in this country. We can see for ourselves, there's so much of division. If each of us in our respective places are, able to be a beacon of positive outlook and bridge people together, I think that would mean a lot. I hope,
Sure.
Nigel, we were able to address your question.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's why I applaud Brian for putting his book out there, because, a lot of the community overseas, I'm in Australia, but I've lived in England as well, and I've travelled to many Commonwealth countries, and I have family in Canada and all over the place. So all the usual Anglo-Indian diaspora nations. But a lot of it, when people talk about the community, it's very nostalgic. A lot of it has to do with nostalgia rather than a lot of facts.
Yep.
But I'm working on a documentary at the moment, which looks more at the facts rather than the nostalgia. So,
Yeah.
But that documentary won't be out for at least another 2 or 3 years. So, because I'm putting a lot of work into it. So yeah, good on you, Brian, as we say in Australia. Good on you.
Thank you.
It's people like you who take the time and the effort to write these books, and because we can't rely just on the stuff that's coming out of academia. There's lots of other people writing about Anglo-Indians, but
Exactly.
a lot of it's academic. I read about the first 3 pages and then I put it away.
It's good you do.
So yeah, I applaud you, and also, I think was it Eugenie Pinto?
Yes.
Yeah, Eugenie, you mentioned Anglo-Indian women. Of course, my mum's an Anglo-Indian woman, all of my aunties, my grandparents. So I have a good understanding of the strength that Anglo-Indian women have and had.
And still do.
Yeah. What I would like to see, I have 2 daughters myself in their 30s. What I would like to see is a stronger representation of Anglo-Indian women in the Anglo-Indian or the All India Anglo-Indian associations. I'd really love to see the head of the All India Anglo-Indian Association of Women. I think that would really help boost the profile of women.
In fact, at the recent reunion that Harry organized, Nigel, Harry was present at one of the symposiums. I did tell him that it's time that they had more number of Anglo-Indian women on their association boards. And I also said, please please start a documentation of all the young achievers, both young men and young women in the community, in all of these associations, so that you have a record of what's being done. And we are not living in the past any longer, because we can see where our children are going, and they are going places.
Yeah, I applaud, if we can have more young women as entrepreneurs in business, I think that would be a huge step forward, because it's business that helps to promote the community, gives employment to other Anglo-Indians, and mentoring, if we can get some more women out there like yourself, mentoring younger entrepreneurs and bringing them into the community, I think that would be fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
But we didn't have much of Chennai. I don't know whether Eugenie Pinto would like to talk about how she saw those years then at the Queen Mary's College, and now how the things have changed. That's one. For Harry McClure, I have this thing about Frank Anthony. Frank Anthony's name was on my certificate when I left high school. I studied in Don Bosco in Calcutta. So his name was there on class 10 and 12. And I think he made a major contribution to the Anglo-Indian community. So that's number 2. We would also like questions, and the Press Institute is hosting this program from people like Yamuna, who's here. Sri Kumar, of course, has refrained from questioning, but I'm still opening it out to him. Maria is here, I know her. So there are some pertinent points that are made about the exclusion of the Anglo-Indian community today and things like that. So these are some of the things that we must address because this basically is about a conversation and not only about nostalgia. So Eugenie, can you start on this?
Yes, I would like to. Yeah. I'd just like to share with you that when I was principal of Queen Mary's College, being an Anglo-Indian had an advantage. You see, we didn't belong to any caste. Okay, we are a casteless community, and that helps a lot in government service, especially when you're pulled in different directions. So my tenure in Queen Mary's was a kind of tenure in which I was able to bring people together and move the institution forward. We introduced a number of courses. We built new buildings. We made the government aware of what was required in the college with regard to infrastructure, educational programs. I remember having Dr. M.S. Swaminathan as our academic advisor on one of our boards of studies. And it was he who told us about introducing food security. So we were very much into things. And I think in a way, Queen Mary's has progressed. It's now offering free education. And I've advised all the Anglo-Indian girls who can't really afford to go to college and pay those exorbitant fees that private colleges charge to go to these government colleges. You may not have the kind of infrastructure that you have in Stella Maris, but you have equally good experienced teachers, and you would get a good education there. And I was so happy to know recently that we had 2 Anglo-Indian sisters passing out from Queen Mary's, doing their MA there, and doing very well in life after that. So, and
yeah, no, other than Queen Mary's, I'm just making it a very general question. How do you see the opportunities for young Anglo-Indian women today when you compare it with your times? That's my question, really.
Oh yes, much more, many more opportunities. You see, when I was studying, we had less number of opportunities, either arts or science or maybe a doctor or an engineer. But nowadays, the opportunities are fantastic. I have people in my own family, youngsters in my own family, who have become partners in McKinsey, partners in KPMG. Okay, there's a young girl, Nick Richards' relative, who's doing her I think she's done microbiology, and she's an advanced scientific advisor to the government of New Zealand. Then there is another young girl who is doing her studies at Melbourne, and she's just finished a doctorate, I believe, and she's a researcher in nanotechnology in Melbourne. A girl from Chennai who studied at Dufton. And all these girls studied in India, in Madras, did their degrees here and went for further studies abroad. Some of them did all their studies here. My niece, Maria, she did her schooling here, her engineering there, her MBA here at IIM Bangalore, and she's now partner in McKinsey in New Jersey. And that shows that you can do much with the kind of education you get in India. You don't have to be educated abroad. You can succeed. Opportunities are there, and our youngsters are taking it. I'm so happy to know that there's a young girl in Stella Maris who's won the gold medal in MA English. And she's an Anglo-Indian girl. The medal is not yet out, so I don't want to mention her name and have any kind of prejudice in that direction. So I do hope she'll go ahead and win it, and she's likely to do so. And so also for the Anglo-Indian boys, the young men are doing very well, not just the women. I have colleges like Patrician College, where I worked after my stint at Queen Mary's College. I was there for about 2 years. I was surprised to see the number of Anglo-Indian boys pursuing higher education and also going into business later on. There was my president of the college at that time. His name was Jared Austin. He's now an entrepreneur. He runs his own interior design business. He did Viscom in Patrician and went on to do MSc Viscom at Loyola. And I'm so happy to see the way they have progressed. So there is immense opportunity, and these children are taking it. And I'm sure there's going to be change for the better because they are very sure of themselves. They are happy with their identity as Anglo-Indians, and they're taking it forward.
Yeah, so that's I mean, those are good stories to hear. Of course, welcome. Harry, can you quickly chip in on Frank Anthony and also with your, broad outlook on the Anglo-Indian community across the world through your magazine? What do you think is the scene now in India? Are people still, wanting to migrate to Australia, New Zealand, elsewhere, or are they happy to be in India, like Eugenie has just mentioned? You're on mute, Harry. Just unmute and.
Sashi, thanks for that. I feel that in today's context, where our community is, I think the question of migration for our youngsters is not compulsory. It's a choice for the young people of today, because as Eugenie said, there are lots and lots of opportunity in India, if you're a well-educated young man or young woman, to stay on here. So if someone wants to migrate from within the Anglo-Indian community, I think it's only because they want to go there and be with other part of the family, or it's only it's a choice now. So in those days, it was not a choice. The whole families were migrating in droves, especially 60s and 70s, 80s. Now youngsters do hesitate. They say, I got a good job in the IT sector or some other field. Why should I leave this and go there and start all over again, or do some courses there, and then they don't want to do that. So many young people, and I know in Madhavaram, there are lots and lots of Anglo-Indian youngsters who own their own flats and they have their own cars and they have a good lifestyle here because they're earning well. So many of them hesitate to migrate now. So, and of course, Frank Anthony's time, Mr. Frank Anthony himself was dead against our Anglo-Indian people for migrating. He said, India is your country, it's your home. You have to be here. So lots of people stayed back, and lots of people that was their, they wanted to go abroad, and the grass is always greener on the other side of the river, they say. But many of them went there and they did very well for themselves. They've contributed positively to the countries that they've migrated to, and they made a name for themselves. So Anglo-Indians are a global community today.
No, my reason for you, for asking you about Frank Anthony was not just because his name was on my certificate, but because he made a very, very, very valuable contribution to the community at large, and he was very well regarded, highly respected, etc. Yeah. What I want to ask you is, of course, I know Beatrix D'Souza was the Tamil Nadu representative for many years. I mean, she's not in our program today, I think. But do you think you lack some sort of leadership today? I mean, this is a journalist asking you a question.
See, Mr. Frank Anthony was a very powerful man in the sense he was good. He was a lawyer. He was a fantastic speaker, and he also used to move around with people like Indira Gandhi. So he had that kind of connections, and he was quite powerful. In today's leaders, we can't say that we can, we can't come up to his stature. That's my feeling. But there are some good leaders even today within our community, and they're taking our community forward. I think Richard could be a better bet to answer this question. Richard, can you chip in a little if you don't mind?
Produces its own leader. So in times of war, you get a certain type of leader. In times of peace, you get certain type of leader. Now, during India's freedom struggle and the Constituent Assembly, you had tall leaders from across the spectrum in the country. Every leader was a giant. So we were happy that we had a giant in Frank Anthony. Now, the quality of leadership within the country has undergone a sea change. Okay, so to each time there's a certain type of leader. So we do have Anglo-Indian Association does have a fine leader in Barry O'Brien. And I mean, those of you who were present at the book launch in IIT this morning, virtual book launch, could see how well he was able to speak and address the various issues that affect the community. So now the thing is, he doesn't have the benefit of being close to the ruling family. He doesn't have history on his side, and Sashi, we do have tall leaders. We do have see the Forum of Anglo-Indian Women has shown leadership here. You have Charles Dice from Kerala, who's been exceptional. Maybe not an eloquent speaker, but one who networks very well. So there are people who, with this leadership qualities. Of course, the community has given leaders to political parties. A leader like Derek O'Brien, for example, but he's with the political party. So I don't think there is lack of leadership.
All right. Okay. Well taken. Maria, any question? No. Okay. Yamuna,
Yes, I'd like
you have
to
something to say. I think you've been wanting to say something for a while. Please.
Yes, I have. I was wanting to suggest to Brian that what Harry just said, that Anglo-Indians have become a global community. So he might think of writing a book called The Everywhere People.
Why not? Why not?
Yes.
Well
I
taken.
don't think you need to be so negative about it or feel sad about it that you've been pushed out of the Constitution. Perhaps you don't need the Constitution. You're everywhere in the world. I'm sure Harry will be able to tell us the statistics of how many Anglo-Indians comprise the diaspora and how many Anglo-Indians are still in India. What is the comparison, Harry?
Yeah, so Yamuna.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Yamuna, can you hear me? Yamuna?
Harry.
Yeah. So Yamuna, this is only a guesstimate because
Yes,
we
I
don't
can.
really have. Yeah, this is what I'm going to. The figures that I'm going to share with all of you is only a guesstimate. In India, we have around between 1.5 lakh to 2 lakhs of Anglo-Indian people, bona fide Anglo-Indian people. And outside India, we have a little over 3 lakhs of Anglo-Indian people. But this is not the gospel, because this is because I run a magazine called Anglos in the Wind, as most of you might know. So I did some kind of research into this, and after a long lots of work on this project, and I came to this conclusion that in India we still have this around 2 lakhs of people, and outside India we've got little more than 3 lakhs of people. So all in all, we are 5 lakhs of people, and I'm happy to say that we are a bigger community than the Parsis.
No, my point was, for Brian, that
Yes.
there's a larger community which is outside the diaspora, so you don't need a country. Vasudeva Kudumbakaran can be, you can be the first citizens of that. But you would be outside and you would be people everywhere. So Brian could possibly think of a secret.
Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I should say,
Yeah?
I am
Did you get it?
a thoroughbred Indian.
Were you able to hear me?
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, Brian, go on.
I am a thoroughbred Indian, and
Yeah.
I don't know any other country other than India. I have been to other countries, but my first and my only love is for India. If Wikipedia has it right, they say we have about 1 million Anglo-Indians in India, and 20,000 in the US of A, and something more than that in Australia, bits and pieces in Canada and England and so on, 200,000 of erstwhile Anglo-Indians in Bangladesh, but we don't talk about them.
Burma, Pakistan.
No, Pakistan,
No.
negligible, maybe less than 10,000.
Brian, you're forgetting about Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka were burghers, they were not Anglo-Indians.
Burgers.
Well, if Brian is finished, there's one point I would like to make. And basically, Brian had mentioned in passing that only those who are resident in India are considered Anglo-Indian according to him. Now, let us not forget the fact that any community has got its cultural aspects to it. And Anglo-Indian was defined in the Indian Constitution because there was so much of lots of, it was vague, who is an Anglo-Indian? Is somebody who's a Goan convert an Anglo-Indian? Is an East Indian an Anglo-Indian? There's so many, so it was defined. Now, when a Tamilian leaves the country, it doesn't mean he ceases being Tamil. He may be an NRI. If a Malayali goes out of this country, it doesn't mean he ceases being a Malayali. So therefore, it is incorrect to say that once you leave India, you're not an Anglo-Indian. Not at all. The Anglo-Indian
Richard, your voice is breaking.
Anglo-Indianness, then they would cease to be Anglo-Indian. But by and large, those who leave India continue to be Anglo-Indian. So we cannot deny them their community.
Point taken.
Thank you,
Before
Brian.
we end this, Richard, if I can,
Yes, sir.
or the moderator here, but if I could just say, ask Brian, we've heard, this is about Madras Week, and we've heard a lot about the Palavaram lines and your home in it, and some of us are planning to visit, because we won't barge in, I can assure you.
You're
But
most welcome.
I know we won't barge, but can you just tell, for the benefit of people who will be watching now, who are watching now, and this is also on YouTube, so this will be watched later, what really is the Palavaram lines all about, and how is it? How was it those years, some years ago, when you were there, and how is it today? A bit of Chennai history.
Yep. Veteran Lines was almost an exclusive Anglo-Indian enclave. It no longer is. Veteran Lines proper has about 70, 75 bungalows and houses, and almost all of them were owned by Anglo-Indians. Today, there are only about 10 families that own properties here. And so things have changed, not drastically, but even when I came to Veteran Lines in 1987, I heard stories of wonder that were there before my time. It continued right up to the middle 1990s, but thereafter, everybody upped and away. So every Sunday afternoon by 4 o'clock, there would be at least 25 boys to get onto the hockey field. We would play till we couldn't see the ball in the darkness. And we had our parties, we had our dances, we had our get-togethers, we had what was called a mini Olympics every year that was run by first the Palavaram Recreation Club, and then the Anglo-Indian Association took it over. But now there are no takers for all these events. So if you want to talk about Veteran Lines, it only has to be nostalgia, or in my case, in the present, regret. Regret that such a wonderful lifestyle has passed. We still try to live it, but when you come, and I welcome you all, when you come, you will see the difference. Come, please come.
Thank you for that. Usually, you have any memories of veteran nights? Usually, have you been there?
Yes, our family known as the Cliffords used to stay there in Palavaram. And I remember my mother taking me when I was about 5 years old on the electric train. I think it was just introduced at that time. And we went all the way to Palavaram to stay with these Cliffords. And it was a big house with a whole lot of them and happy times, cooking Anglo-Indian food, singing, laughing, dancing. And there were big families in those days, not the kind of smaller families that we have these days. And maybe that made the difference as well. But I have no regrets that we have passed on and we've moved away because we've got exciting times ahead of us. I can see it happening around me. And I can see that Chennai is changing. Madras has become Chennai. And there are so many more in the community who are not Anglo-Indians, but who have the same joy of living and who have the same understanding of getting together in harmony, which the Anglo-Indian community usually had. But I can see that with other communities as well. So I don't think that we need to look back in anger or regret. We can look forward to a fascinating time with growing young India, where Anglo-Indians are part of the other Indian communities, enjoying the same privileges that the other communities have as well.
That we spoke about identity more than anything else. So that was nice. And we're usually really painting a very positive picture about our youngsters. And I think the only way forward now is to look ahead, really. There's no point in going into too much nostalgia.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
On that note, can we conclude, Sashi?
Yes, please. You do the honors. You have the honors.
Oh, well, I've already said it. Thanks to the Press Institute of India, Sashi, Guru, your technical assistant, Dr. Brian Pepin. We really look forward to your book. I certainly am looking forward to reading The Nova Man. Harry, as always, the man for all seasons. And we look forward to the next dance whenever you feel up to running it. Eugenie, you're the person who really encourages people. Please keep that up. And to all the people who are here on this show, I may not be able to thank you individually, but each of you matter. And thanks for tuning in. And we'll meet again sometime soon. Thank you. Good night. God bless.
Thank you.